Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the best available free agents in the NBA that still have not been signed to a team. I do this video every year, just kind of talking about, at this later stage of the offseason now, some players that are still out there and available and could possibly help some teams around the league as well. But really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload twice a day, every day, and all throughout the NBA offseason. So if you're looking for a place for consistent NBA offseason content, this is a great place to be. You can also leave a like rating on the video, helps me out a ton, lets me know that you're enjoying the content, and lets it get out to more people on YouTube as well. You can also hang out with me, the various socials at the bottom of the screen outside of these videos. And with all that said, with the quickest intro of all time on this channel, let's get started. So first up on the list in terms of free agents that are available right now that I think can help teams is someone that I think was on the list last year as well, and it's Iman Shumpert. For whatever reason, this guy continually gets signed late into free agency. And a couple of years ago, he was a really valuable player for Sacramento, a guy that continued to, sign relatively large contracts around the league and has just fallen off a bit and still can provide some of that shooting and some of that defense. Is obviously getting up there in age, as is the case with a lot of players on this list. But still, I think that Iman Shumpert can be a helpful player to a team that just needs a little bit of that veteran leadership. Again, when you go back to his time in Sacramento, that was the last time that the Kings were actually doing really good things. And after he was moved, they didn't just crater immediately, but they simply weren't as good. And so if you're a younger team, maybe a team like Atlanta that wants to potentially make a playoff push next year, just any of those teams that still are towards the younger side and could use a veteran presence of a guy that can shoot and defend, even if he doesn't play a ton, could just be a good locker room guy. I think Iman Shumpert would be an interesting player to take a look at. Next up now is a guy that I was actually really surprised to see is still unsigned. And it's DeMarre Carroll. And I know that for a lot of you guys, it's like, well, he's just not that good. Like, why would he, why would that surprise you? Last year, he signed a significant free agent contract with the San Antonio Spurs. And it was a bit of a weird situation, if I'm remembering this correctly, because I think Marcus Morris was supposed to go to San Antonio. They dumped Davis Bertans to Washington as a result of signing Marcus Morris. Then he ixnayed that and he went to New York, and then the Spurs turned around and signed DeMarre Carroll. DeMarre Carroll was a pretty good player for the Nets, could shoot, could defend whenever he was healthy, and was just a nice wing combo 3-4 guy to have. Honestly, I'd really like to have him in Brooklyn right about now. And was okay with the Spurs, but they were okay with just dumping his salary and getting rid of him. And then he ended up on Houston's roster, so he's bounced around a couple of different places, but he has most recently shown an ability to, at least knock down some shots and defend for a team that was okay, with Brooklyn a handful of years ago. I don't know what happened in San Antonio. I don't know what happened in Houston. Maybe he's just washed. Maybe he's just too old. He's too hurt, whatever. But I think DeMarre Carroll is another interesting player to take a look at on the free agency market. Next up now is Kyle Korver, a player that is one of the best shooters of all time in the NBA and is obviously way up there in age and might just end up retiring. Who knows? But, as recently as, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, this was a player that was worthy of being traded for the trade deadline, and now he's completely unsigned. He will help some team. Again, I go back to, when you're looking at veterans like this, I go back to teams like Atlanta, like Sacramento, that need some of that veteran presence on their rosters. Even if the guy doesn't play a ton, can come in and make a few shots if you need him to. Or Kyle Korver can go to a bit more of a contending team, maybe to someone like the Lakers or the Clippers, where he can just kind of be out there and knock down some jump shots. So Kyle Korver is another interesting free agent that is still on the market as of right now. Next up is the first younger-ish player on this list. I almost said on this roster. And it's Alonzo Trier. And the reason that I think it's a little bit odd that he's on this list is because I think, 2 years ago, I was talking about Alonzo Trier as not a critical part of what the Knicks were doing, but a significant young player, a guy that could score, a guy that was a good athlete, put up some pretty good numbers, albeit on some bad Knicks teams, and he just looked like a guy that belonged on an NBA roster. And if he could kind of start shifting his game more towards being an off-ball shooter and defender, I thought he had the athleticism to be a good player, and with a little bit of playmaking, perimeter creation as well. And then ultimately, the Knicks decided to move on from him, and now no team has signed him as of yet. Still a relatively young player, still someone that I think has some potential to grow into something. So if you're looking to take a flyer on a younger player like this, as a guy that's a former undrafted player a handful of years ago, I think Alonzo Trier would be an interesting player to take a look at. Next up now is another player that, again, I'm surprised has not been signed, and it's Reggie Jackson, a guy that has bounced around to a couple of different teams. I believe was a buyout player for the Clippers last year. Still can do some things, and I think that people are a little bit scared off, just as fans, when it comes to Reggie Jackson because of the big contract that he was on, because he was hurt all the time. He can still do some things for your team. Is he going to be incredibly impactful? No, but he can, run a bench unit, come in and score a little bit, shoot a little bit. he's just always been one of those guys that maybe thinks he's a little bit better than he actually is. So if he can tone that part of his game down and just be a solid bench guard, he can still be, in the league for the next couple of years. If he can't figure that stuff out though, then eventually he'll probably end up overseas or in some different league, and that won't be a great look for Reggie Jackson. But again, still someone that I think could help an NBA roster right now, as long as he adjusts his game a little bit here. Second to last now is a staple on lists like this over the years, and it's Jamal Crawford. I think this is the second or the third year running now that Jamal Crawford has been on a list like this, where he just goes unsigned late in the offseason, and eventually he always gets picked up. But I think this year might be the year, unfortunately for Jamal Crawford, that things just don't work out for him. He has never been a very good defender, hijacks the offense a little bit too much. He can make some shots, he can create a little bit on the perimeter, but just the efficiency is not going to be there. And at the end of the day, I think this is probably it for Jamal Crawford. He's been a fun player. He's been a player that people have loved to root for over the years, and has just been a part of the NBA for a really, really long time, and a part of these lists for a long time as well. But I think ultimately, it's just not going to happen for him. I think people are done with the Jamal Crawford thing, and it's just being such a one-dimensional player where, like, we have guys in the league that are all offense, no defense, but to be all in efficient offense and no defense is a tough combination at the age that Jamal Crawford's at. He's had a great career. I think it's time to hang it up, but I did feel the need to put him on this list because he is at least a notable free agent that is still out there in the NBA. And last up now is a player that, I think might be the most usable guy in this entire list, and it's Quinn Cook. And I'm not saying that Quinn Cook is going to come out and average 15 a game for you or anything, but he can really shoot the basketball. He showed an ability to play in crunch time at times for that Golden State group, and I'm not saying it was all the time, but he can do some things for you as a shooter, can play make a little bit for you. Obviously isn't going to be great defensively because of his size, but he's got that championship experience, especially coming off that Lakers run, and is someone that I think could help, again, a younger roster around the league. If you're looking at someone like Atlanta, even a team like Dallas that maybe just needs a little bit of shooting, I think Quinn Cook could be an interesting addition there. You can go maybe even to Utah. Just you think of teams generally that need shooting. New Orleans, Utah, teams like that. I think that Quinn Cook could be a really interesting addition for them. Can add a little bit of that perimeter creation and playmaking in there as well. You're not expecting this guy to be any kind of defensive stopper or anything, but he is an interesting free agent out there that I would think the teams would at least kind of want to take a look at in free agency. But that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, our best free agents available right now in the NBA, and honestly, it's not that inspiring of a list, but again, I make this video every year, so I wanted to do it again this year. It's Iman Shumpert, Amari Carroll, Kyle Korver, Alonzo Trier, Reggie Jackson, Jamal Crawford, and Quinn Cook. That is in no particular order. If I did have to order it, I would probably go Shumpert, Cook, Korver, Carroll, Trier, Jackson, Crawford. But at the end of the day, yeah, like I said, it's in no particular order. In the past, we've had like a handful of big guys that were kind of floating around that could kind of be signed. But for whatever reason this year, that just hasn't happened. All the big guys have kind of gotten scooped up. It's not an inspiring best available for agency class, as I said, but that's who we have to work with this year. That's going to be the end of today's video, as I said. Thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, including any of the videos that I've been putting out 2 a day every day, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. There'll be some team season previews coming very, very soon as well, so be on the lookout for those. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.